It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands post-game show. The Purdue Boilermakers absolutely obliterate the Nebraska Cornhuskers at Mackey Arena here on a beautiful, snowy Sunday afternoon. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Joe Jackson, and Craig Bowers will be joining us here in a little bit. I believe he's working hard in the press conference room talking to Matt Painter and some of the different players that'll speak to the media. So if he gets a chance to jump on, he can share with us what we've heard. But let's get right into it, Joe, because, we talked about it in November and talked about how this was going to be a work in progress for Matt Painter to kind of find his groove for what this identity of this team would be and find the right rotations and the right lineups. And man, over the last 5 games, the Purdue Boilermakers have won 5 in a row, and they just look better and better and better as these games go along. Caleb First enters the starting lineup. You're seeing the rookies, or the freshmen, I should say, with CJ Cox and Jakari Harris and Raleigh Burgess starting to make their little impacts. Miles Colvin all of a sudden sets on fire today in the second half. And then it just goes without saying the guys that you lean on with Trey Kaufman-Renn, Fletcher Lawyer, and then, of course, Braden Smith, who is a basketball savant. This guy is unbelievable. And if you thought he has been good over the last 2 years as Purdue's gone to a national championship and has out now how he's become the leader of this team this year, in these last 5 games, he has taken his game to another level. It is a pleasure to watch. The way he moves around that basketball court is like a maestro. He is fantastic, one of the best players in all of college basketball. And when you talk about going from, Carson Edwards to Jaden Ivey to Zach Edey and now Braden Smith as your star of your team, like, this guy has it all. And everything that we've ever said about what Zach Edey did to get to where he got, to being one of the best players in the country, Braden Smith is doing it at the point guard position now. It's a different way than the amazingness that we saw from Zach Edey, but what Braden Smith is doing as a point guard now for this team is an absolute pleasure to watch. He is as locked in as I have ever seen a guard play for the Purdue Boilermakers. And honestly, as this goes on, you're going to say he's one of the best guards in Big Ten history. And that's a long storied history of some great guard play. So I'm trying not to get ahead of my skis, but the last few games at Rutgers, now today against Nebraska, who's no pushover team at Mackey Arena. And I know I'm going on a long rift here, but I have just been so impressed by how he's played and how this team has come together, and what we talked about, Joe, with them having to get out to a hot start here in Big Ten play here in January.
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive what Braden Smith has done, and there's still some music going on, so my bad if you hear that, or if I'm talking really loud, because I can't really hear. Mackey was as loud as ever. I was even, especially on a break game, still some of the student section was back, but not at full capacity. Braden Smith just toyed with Nebraska, especially in that second half, where he just kind of got to whatever he wanted. It didn't really matter, throwing half court lobs, getting tough threes, pulling up. I mean, last 3 games, 7 assists, 14 assists, 14 assists. Last 5 games, 12 assists, 10 assists, 7 assists, 14 assists, and only 12 total turnovers in that span. So like a 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. After the Auburn game, right? There was and rightfully so, tons of major concern about Purdue. And they still have some questions to answer, I think, about what does it look like against the top tier teams. This last 5 games is pretty much exactly what you wanted. They've won every game by 18 plus. Obviously, capped off by a 36-point win in this one. Braden Smith has been awesome, and we'll get into him a little bit more in a sec because I want to talk about the defense from him especially in a bit, but this was a game where it's almost just like I don't even know what to take away, right? It's so absurd what Purdue was able to do that it's just like it's not like that level's not going to happen again. You can look through my notes. I have 5 notes for the entirety of this game. It was, okay, Purdue's really pressuring the ball defensively. Okay, Purdue's switching basically everything. Purdue's flipping the screen to get openings. Defensive energy is insane. Purdue can't miss. That was my 5 notes for the whole game. Because after like the first 10 minutes, it's just like, yeah, Purdue is the better team. Purdue's going to make everything. This was a game where Purdue is the better team, but Nebraska, with how they play, it's so unique, can force teams into weird situations. Purdue did exactly what they needed to do. Didn't even mess around. Got out to a gigantic lead early. Never looked back. Contributions from everybody across the board. Like, not much, anything more you could ask for in this game.
Yeah, it was absolutely a pleasure to watch. And seeing a guy like CJ Cox, you know, what did he finish for the day? Because at one point he was 8 for 8. And as I was starting to gather my things at the end, did he finish
9 for 11?
9 for 11 with what, 23 points. I mean, like you said, they're not going to play like this every day, but you're just seeing how everyone, and this happens every year with Purdue, especially over the last like 6, 7, 8 years, right? As the team gets into January, that's where you really start to see everyone kind of mold into their roles, right? And it takes a minute for them to find themselves. And we've gone through this in years past where you have an idea of what the roster is going to be to start the year. You think a guy like maybe Brandon Newman will be the starter, or this guy will be the starter, or whoever. And then the rotations kind of change early on, and they're trying to find their identity. And there's guys that maybe thought they were going to have a certain role to start the year, and it changes. And it takes a minute for players to kind of accept those things, right? So I'm sure guys like Miles Colvin and Camden Heide had big goals for this year, but now as things are starting to adjust and their roles are starting to get more defined, it to me today was kind of a sign of guys really start like the first stages of embracing what your roles are on the team, you know, and that might go against what your goals were going into the season. But then once that buy-in happens, and then you add it with the talent you have, then Matt Painter gets to go to work, right? Then he gets, you know, then you start seeing the social media team putting out the videos where Painter is dialed in and preaching to them what they need to hear. And they're just locked in. And in the last 5 games, these have been pivotal games. It's not easy to win at Rutgers, right? Northwestern normally always gives them problems. Nebraska beat them last year handedly. And they're dusting these teams. So I'm sure there's going to come a point where they, you know, hit their bumps in the road. There's much more talented teams coming up here in the Big Ten. But these teams are also not pushovers. So just because Purdue has made it look so easy doesn't mean that you sit there as a fan go and just kind of wipe that away like it's not a big deal. It shouldn't be understated how impressive they've looked here over this stretch.
Yeah, not at all. Like, it should not be understated because this is a different team than the team that played Auburn and Texas A&M. Like, I think if you took this Purdue team right now and replayed it, their 4 losses, like those games, I think they probably go 2-2 in that stretch. I still think they lose at Marquette. I still think they lose to, well, I'm going to assume Janai Broom is healthy for the Auburn game. Obviously, if he's not healthy, which he isn't right now, that's a little different. But yes, the last 4 Big Ten games are against, you know, 2 of the 3 worst teams in Minnesota and Rutgers and 2 teams that are going to be bubble-ish in Northwestern Nebraska. They won all 4 of them by 18 plus. You went on the road at Rutgers by 18 in a game you can't buy a 3. You beat Northwestern, a team that in theory should give Purdue a lot of issues, by 18 at home in a game that was easily could have been a 35-point win. You beat Nebraska, a team that plays such a unique style, by 36. Those things cannot be overstated. You get the lineup change. This team looks better. Caleb First, that was the one thing I was harping on all years. Like, I think for Purdue to reach their ceiling, it involves Caleb First. I felt like he just had to be the big, and you're really starting to see that come through defensively. CJ Cox is an absolute dude. Harris is starting to round into form as like a legit backup big, or not backup big, backup guard.
Yep.
This is a team that there's still plenty of Big Ten play. Their next 5 games at Washington, at Oregon, home against Ohio State, home against Michigan, home against IU. That should be a stretch that they kind of have to go 4-1. I think if they want to compete for the Big Ten title, like at Washington, very winnable. At Oregon, that's a toss-up. Home against Ohio State, very, very winnable. Home against Michigan, super tough. And then home against IU should be winnable. 4-1 over the next 5. That puts them at 9-2 with, staring down a tough stretch in the end of February. This is where we wanted this team to be coming in this point. I said for this first 5 Big Ten games, I said at worst you had to go 4-1. And even if they lose at Washington, they're still 4-1 in that stretch. So really impressive stuff. The team is buying in. I've kind of been workshopping this theory, not theory, because I don't know, it's a new ideology. I'm sure many people have thought of it, but there are coaches that are floor raisers for teams, and there are coaches that are ceiling raisers. And then you get the few that I think are both. And I think Matt Painter is one of the few, especially in the Big Ten, that falls into that both category, where you give him players that buy into him, he's going to raise the floor and get the most out of him. But he's also been awesome at surrounding his stars with what they need. And now you're starting to see, CJ Cox really emerges that 4th guy, and Caleb First, even if it isn't always offensive production, he's been the 4th or 5th best player on the floor. And now you're starting to get some bench production. It's been awesome to see.
No question about it. Appreciate everybody joining us here at the start of our Boilers in the Stands post-game show, as we're here for you after every single game. Please hit that like button while you're hanging out. Craig Bowers should be joining us here in a little bit. Not sure how far along they are with the press conferences going on underneath Mackey Arena right now, but sure that there's a lot of smiles in there as Purdue crosses the 100-point threshold. They're just on fire. I think the all-time record for threes in a game is 20 for Purdue, right? They fall one short of that?
Yeah, they had 19.
Yeah, they had 19. So it was just a impressive display. And early on in the game, you could tell it was going to be one of those games, right? And just the way they move the ball. And it's not just Braden Smith now that's, finding the open shooter at the end of a shot clock. Like Trey Kaufman-Renn had a couple really nice passes. I think one early on to Fletcher Lawyer, where it looked like he was going to be in some trouble, and was able to find that outlet. Cause everyone is like I said, they just understand where they're supposed to be on the court. And it's all just a nice cohesion of, ball movement and passing the ball, moving without the ball, so it's a beautiful thing. And, and then defensively too, we talk so much about offense, and I know I'm probably guilty of this as much as anyone, just focusing so much on offense and not giving defense its due. But in that first half, when the game was still in the balance, just how pesky Braden Smith is as a on-ball defender, that really sets the tone. And there was one time where they got lost in their rotations defensively, and CJ Cox, you could see how they were all trying to make up for CJ lost his guy for a second, and CJ's kind of trailing around to try to find his guy. He's the one that ends up getting the turnover, leading the fast break the other way. Jakari Harris at one point getting physical with a guy, on the baseline or, on the sideline, there, and, forces a turnover. They're guards, man. I know defensively at times the bigs, have their work cut out for them, but the guards, man, they can really dirty things up for the other team.
Yeah, the defense has been just better. And I guess I'm just going to jump to it. Braden Smith has turned into a good defender. He's not going to be an all Big Ten defender. There's still certain matchups, especially if there's big guys on him that could give him issues. He has become a solid defender. Lawyer is what he is, where, right, at times he's just going to get overpowered, but he's still a guy that is in the right position 90% of the time. Obviously, Cox is an elite or very, very good defender. Harris is very, very, very good defender. And then you have the better backside rotations now with First and TKR. There's a couple comments. There it is. From Derek Mulliken says, is Purdue running semi-matchup zone? I've noticed a lot of that look lately. So it isn't a matchup zone per se, but it is a little bit. They're a team that, right, they don't have the best individual defenders. And Cox and Harris, I would say, are two very good individual defenders. Colvin is solid, and First has been solid in his role, but they just play the gaps more. And I'm trying to get positioned here. It's a little harder to do it here at Purdue, but
You're doing great.
If you had, so say Purdue's on defense here, right? You might have something like this. You know, team might do this, and sorry, I wasn't really prepared for this, but we'll get into it now. There we go. So maybe something like this, right? Or maybe even, we'll call it this, right? So I know this isn't the best reflection. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. So ball screen happens. Purdue's going to be in drop coverage with their big, right? You have a guy trailing. They'll just have like this defender or this defender just cheat in more. And so like if there is, a roll or something like that, they have this guy zone up more. They're willing to give that skip pass. It's not as exaggerated as what Nebraska does defensively, where Nebraska really, really does this. But what they do more is they've been helping in gaps more. They've been digging in a little bit more, and they're going to be giving up a few more threes, knowing that, hey, we can probably rotate out enough. And so then when the ball happens, like this can be a switch if needed, where then this defender comes out here. You have help down low. You're going to have the big dropping to also help. I know this isn't the prettiest diagram, but basically there's a bigger effort of helping into this area right here and trusting the guys to make the correct rotations on the perimeter to then help out when's needed. So it isn't specifically like a zone, but it is a defense that has become more and more predicated on being able to help in the gaps more. And the other thing that's been able to do, which has been one of the more noticeable things really over the last month for Purdue, is they're forcing turnovers. And right off the jump, you could just see, man, this team is pressuring the ball. Like, I have not seen a Purdue team pressure the ball like that in, I don't know, I've been a fan for 7 years now, like maybe the entire 7 years. I would have to go through maybe the first 2 years with like Nogel and Eric Hunter. But since then, they have not pressured the ball like this. And because you can live in that help a little bit more, you can live in those gaps a little bit more, you can live with teams taking a few more threes because you're going to be able to contest them a little bit more. You can pressure the ball more, and you have the personnel to do it. Harris, absolute dog. Cox, absolute dog. Colvin, he's very good pressuring the ball. Braden has been phenomenal pressuring the ball at his size. Like, it just kind of all melted together. And then the last thing, and I know I'm rambling now, but just the defense has been so much better. First has been awesome on the back, not only on the backside, but also the perimeter. He's the guy where they can hide TKR on a true big now. They don't need TKR to be out on the perimeter defensively because First can take those matchups. First can take Ace Bailey. First can switch onto Barnheiser. First can switch onto Bryce Williams while also still giving good rim protection. So you add all those things together, plus just guys getting more comfortable in the roles. It adds up to, hey, Purdue winning by 36. Muted.
God dang it. There I go. Trying to be gracious with you, taking the floor, and everybody enjoys you hitting the board early on here on the show. But no, you couldn't have said it any better. And we had so many questions early in the year, like, how are they going to shake out this big man rotation and what are they going to do there? And, like I said, like a guy like Willie Berg, right? Going into the season, I'm sure he had certain goals for himself, especially when Daniel Jacobson gets hurt and everything goes up for grabs. Caleb First is struggling early in the year, and it kind of feels like that role for the 4 and the 5 is up in the air. Do they want to go small? How do they want to play this? And it's a breath of fresh air to be able to see your senior and somebody that's been here through all the ups and downs and through the national championship run. He should be the guy that steps up and takes that. So I'm happy for him because this is his last shot, right? This is his last shot to finish strong on his career at Purdue, where he's had a lot of great moments. And so now it's your opportunity here to, him and Trey Kaufman-Renn, who have, everybody's kind of, stood by and done what you could to get the most out of Zach Edey's dominance and greatness at the college level and at Mackey Arena. And now these guys have their opportunity to make an impact on a great team here. That it's going to be a fun run to finish here in the Big Ten. There's, I think the talent level is evenly spread, at least at the top. So it's going to come down to the end, and this team's going to be right there. I got some guys at the CHGO Sports Studios. One's a Northwestern fan, one's an Illinois fan, one's a Wisconsin fan, a few Wisconsin fans, and Illinois looks great right now, right? Michigan State looks great. Okay, Michigan looks very good. But you know what? Purdue's going to have something to say about this too. Okay. And, until somebody takes it from them, Purdue has done what they've done in the Big Ten for a reason. And if you were one of those people that just thought it was all Zach Edey, well, you're finding out that you're eating your words now from some of that talk. And, like I said, I'm sure there was bumps in the road when Zach Edey was here. So there will be bumps in the road for this team as well. That's what, Big Ten play is all about. But it has been so much fun to watch these guys come into their own here to start January, because this is typically when they do turn it on. And so I don't know. It's just funny to watch because like every year we're kind of like, I guess with the, exception of last year, which we knew how great that team was going to be all the way throughout. But like every year we kind of go through this phase where we're like, I don't know how it's going to go. And then you're like, oh yeah, this is who Purdue is. This is who Matt Painter is. And they're showing it right now. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And you just see the developments and you see the growth and there's a lot of guys, the big three especially, right? Well, maybe not TKR. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer were supposed to be quote unquote, Zach Edey made. And Braden Smith wasn't supposed to be able to score the ball this year because teams could pressure him. And Braden Smith wasn't supposed to be able to facilitate the ball because now teams don't have to help onto Zach Edey. And Fletcher Lawyer is supposed to take a huge dip in 3-point percentage because he's not getting good looks anymore because Zach Edey isn't there. Well, Braden Smith's arguably the best point guard in the country. Fletcher Lawyer is jumped from 44.4% to 48.6% from three on the year, while also shooting 9 percentage points better from two on the year. He is 26th best 3-point shooter in the entire country. He is 10th best in conference play only. There's a whole lot of talk of like, hey, this backcourt shouldn't be good enough without Zach Edey, and there's still things to prove, and they still have to do. There are still certain matchups I think they have to really prove themselves. The Marquettes, the Auburns, the Texas A&Ms. Like they still have to prove themselves in those games, I think, a little. But man, just to say that like discredit them so much this whole offseason and them both to play how they have been, it's been really, really fun to see. Like Fletcher Lawyer had what? Fletcher Lawyer today had 19 points and 1 assist. And like when you're thinking of best players, he's like probably the 5th best, like the 4th or 5th player that pops into your mind. Something like that,
right?
Today.
Play of the game with that nice little
true.
Pretty. I mean, you had that one, then you had the CJ Cox up and under. Then you of course had the two.
One should have counted, but didn't count.
Then you had the 2 reverse dunks. I mean, it was a highlight reel day for the Purdue Boilermakers, and you're 100% right when you talk about people getting a little ahead of their skis on the downfall of what Purdue was going to be this year without Edey. Those same people also didn't think Edey was going to play well in the NBA. So they have to eat their words a lot of different ways here. And maybe Matt Painter was right when he told us, after one of those March Madness games last year, like, hey, guys are going to have to take a test if they want to talk ball. I'd probably fail that.
Set him up.
Yeah, I did. I threw for the layup, but then his dunk was dunking on people like me who ball, Joe. I only know it to a certain extent. So I'd probably fail Painter's test. But that being said, it is fun to watch people eat their words. And hey, Braden Smith's holding the receipts. Our guy, Rafe L. Davis, and it's all love. Obviously he's, true Boilermaker to the core, but even Braden, no one's safe from the Braden receipts. So be careful what you put out there because he's coming for you. And you guys got to love the competitiveness from Braden Smith. I did see somebody mention about the minutes, and I know we were going to get into that. And I know Kraig's going to be joining us here shortly. But I am curious just from your perspective. I don't know if you're talking to Kraig or if you're in trouble.
I am. I'm talking to Kraig.
I was just making sure you weren't getting thrown out, which Mackey's always very accommodating to us, and we love them very much. And I miss everyone at Mackey, and I promise I'm going to be there. But Kraig will give me crap as soon as he comes on the airwaves. He knows that anytime there's even a modicum of snow, I refuse to get on I-65 because there is no more dangerous of a road than I-65 when it's snowing. I refuse. I will not do it. So I cowered out and missed a great game once again. So, but just to your point, before we get into some of the minutes talk, we can talk about some of the different stats of the game and obviously get a lot of Kraig's thoughts on the game as well. But it is interesting, the elevation of play when you show what Braden has done, obviously, and then Fletcher's 3-point percentage going up, his efficiency going up. Like, how much does that surprise you that without the gravitational force of Edey, where you would think these guys have so much more open looks and so much more room to roam because of how many people are going to be sucked in by, having to pay attention to Zach, but it's actually kind of flipped where without Zach, now the freedom to do things that they couldn't do last year because your responsibility was get the ball into the best player in the country. How much does it have to do with that versus just one more year of experience from these guys and them simply just becoming better basketball players?
It's a mix. I think for a game like this one specifically, I talked about it a little bit in the preview. Early, I don't know if it was our preview. I was on a Nebraska sided preview as well. Like a game like this specifically where Edey was good last year, don't get me wrong, in the Nebraska game, but you almost just have to force touches against a team that wants to force threes. It feels like in a game like this, it was almost a little bit more freeing of just, you could kind of do what you needed to do. I also think credit just needs to keep going to Painter for stuff like this. I'm looking at the numbers last year, which this is still a lot of pick and rolls. But in 39 games, Purdue ran, look, possessions per game. Purdue ran about 16 pick and rolls per game last year. And now this year, that number is up to almost 21. So they're also just putting the ball in their best player hands even more and more. Obviously, Zach Edey was the best player last year. You want to put the ball in his hands. I'm not saying last year was bad strategy by any mistake, but you're just adjusting as well, where you don't have to force feed post-ups as much this year. They still run a lot of post-ups, don't get me wrong, for TKR and stuff compared to most teams, as they should, but it isn't something they have to do. They can just say, hey, Purdue, or hey, Braden Smith, here's the ball, go create. And before the gravity came from Edey, garnering three guys' attention, this year it's Braden Smith doing that. And he could, force two people on the ball defensively against the pick and roll, but you got shooters everywhere. And so the spacing's still there. The open shots are still there. I could look up this year, 58% of Purdue's catch and shoot threes are open. And so 42% are contested, one of the best in the country. This year, last year, only 53% were open. So they've jumped on that too. And just, I think credit has to go to Painter. Obviously, credit has to go for Braden Smith for being the best passer in the country as well. There's one or two guys where you could argue, I think maybe could be better passers than Braden Smith. And even then, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. There's not really a better passer than Braden. And that's going to lead to good things.
Yep. And joining the show is Kraig as I try to figure out how to fix this. There it is.
That's what you wanted? Got you.
You'd think that I'd know how to do this, but I don't. Joining the show, of course, is our guy, Kraig Bowers, back from, of course, the press conferences. We're talking to Matt Painter and some of the players. Kraig, I don't know where you want to go with it first. If you want to give your instant reaction to the game or talk about some of the things you heard from the press conferences, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I'll do just my quick reaction to the game, which is, wow, that was fun. Let's do that again. I like those kind of wins. Obviously, 19 made threes today. I'm fairly certain that that's the most since Iowa in 2018, where Purdue hit 23s in that game. But I mean, when everybody's clicking on all cylinders and TKR is clicking in the middle, this team is going to be really hard to beat. And shout out to Joe, who, when we kind of did the preview of this, said this felt like a game where Purdue hadn't had a game yet where everybody was on at the same time this year. And you got a window today of what Purdue can look like when that happens, when you have CJ banging threes and Miles banging threes, and then Lawyer doing what he always does from outside, and TKR hitting the short roll. It's just going to be a really, really difficult team to beat. Fred Hoiberg said in the presser right off the bat, kind of like, if TKR is going to hit a 15-foot floater on a short roll, Purdue's not gonna get beat very many times. And I think the other thing we really have to look at is the defensive improvement. If you followed along with us, we've already talked about just how much this defense has jumped up in KenPom since the starting lineup rotation. If you look at turnovers forced, these last 3 games are in the top 7 of the year for Purdue in terms of turnovers forced, and how they've been able to pressure, the way they've been able to attack and force teams to turn the ball over, which then lets Purdue get out in transition for easy alley-oops for Cam, for Miles. Jakari's finished in transition a few times too. It just makes the game easier, right? When you can get those easy buckets, it just opens up a lot of different things for this team. From the press conference itself, kind of related to that, I asked Matt Painter about just kind of the jump and being able to force turnovers more often. And he basically said that they started pressuring with their bigs, that they really hadn't been doing that until the last couple of weeks, just because of the sheer size that they normally have with their big men. But with Caleb in the lineup and TKR, that they've been pressuring the ball more with their bigs in those pick and roll situations, playing more. I guess Joe can explain this a little bit more, but playing more at level or stepping out just a little bit further instead of dropping all the time. So I think that obviously, Purdue scores 104 points, but I really, really think it's the defensive improvements that have changed this team and changed what their outlook is for the rest of the season.
No question about it. No question about it. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. There it is. Jeez,
Kraig, how is your lighting so much better? We are 15 feet apart.
I've got a light on my camera.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Hey, let's keep this up. We talked about it, Kraig, a few games ago, just how what did I do?
No, he was trying to mess with his cell phone light, and then it looked like a creepy
it is
horror
weird.
movie.
It is weird how, yeah, that is weird. But no, it is. We talked about how important it was to get off to this quick start here in the Big Ten, knowing that they have a tougher road here to end the season here for Big Ten play. But yes,
as most top teams do.
Correct. Yeah, it's a weird one, right? And you don't. Michigan State doesn't come to Mackey Arena. Illinois doesn't come to Mackey Arena this year. So those are 2 teams that are going to be at the top of the Big Ten. So you got to take advantage of the wins that you need to get, to brace for the impact of the upcoming hurdles that always happen when you play, Big Ten play. So yeah, I agree with the chat. Hit that like button here while you're hanging out. We'll start to get into some of the finer details of the game. I don't know where you guys want to go with this next. If you want to talk about rotational minutes or the stats of the game, that's up to you guys.
Should we throw out the super chats really quick and then jump into the stats?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some super chats for sure. It's a good idea.
From Jason Depew, bits for $4.99. Bits is where it's at for the best Purdue content. Hit the like button and subscribe. We appreciate, they're always in here supporting, and we do really appreciate that. And then Olive Jazzer says, at Joe, get anti-reflective lenses, bro. I know. I used to wear my contacts every day, but now with my work, I'm just on my laptop all day, and then I just wear glasses, and now I don't like wearing contacts as much, but I know it reflects. I just wear them for these Purdue games. And he says, Boiler BTFU, what an unbelievable game to watch. Appreciate the insights as always, boys. Keep it rolling. So we appreciate the support from both of them. I don't know if we want to get into some of the other or just get into the stats and then get to the start counts later.
Well, I did see somebody earlier in the show mention that, we can talk about the minutes for the game. We've talked about it a few times, or at least I brought up, Braden's playing 40 minutes a game. Is there any concern? Well, a game like today means you only play 30 minutes, right? Braden finishes with 30 minutes. Maybe let's get into some of the rotational minutes, see how things kind of work themselves out that way, and then find our way into the stats.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I think you said rotation, right? I'm going to be honest.
Yes,
I was a little spaced out. So here it is pulled up for anybody that is watching on YouTube. Color box means that player played a minute. You can see down at the bottom, Purdue margin, that is per lineup. Obviously a little bit more spread out in terms of minutes, just with the blowout. The last, Braden doesn't play the last 10 minutes. The only starter is CJ that plays within the last 10 minutes at all. Nothing too crazy to me, I think, in terms of rotation. I think this is going to be pretty standard where in terms of starters, Braden's going to play every minute. Fletch is going to play the first 10 to 12, sit a couple, come back in. First is going to be the first sub out, and it's going to usually be for one of Heidi or Burgess. Harris will come back in for first, or Harris will come in for Lawyer whenever Lawyer does come out. And then basically like that rotation back to the third guard, whether it be Cox, Colvin, or Harris, just kind of depends on game. Obviously, CJ had this one going, so he's going to get a bulk of the minutes. Some games it'll be Harris, some games it'll be Colvin. I don't know if I have too much aside from the last 10 minutes, the first 30 minutes of this feels pretty standard for what the rotation is going to be, assuming Purdue is getting in foul trouble and players are playing well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One of the things that, I was just giving it a look here. Like I don't know how much you guys put into stock here, like just with CJ Cox and Jakari Harris, just looking at that, and how much more do you think that those minutes will continue to elevate if they're able to play the way they have on a day like today? Because, man, it was fun to watch that. And I know Kraig has been big on CJ Cox's ability, and even before the year has started. And so it really shined out today, didn't it, Kraig?
100%. And I think just what he can do, I think he's a more consistent. I don't know what the actual percentages are, but just in terms of consistency of that 3-point shot, I think he's the most consistent option to pair with Lawyer out there, so that TK's got, 2 3-point shooters on the wings or in the corner at all times out there on the floor with them. And then it also just gives Braden that other ball handler when they need it. He's done a really nice job from that standpoint. Hasn't turned the ball over much. Not that he's had a ton of usage, but, can kind of go to him when Braden does need help. And I don't know how much more dramatically the minutes change as the season goes on, because I mean right now they're getting their minutes already, right? And Miles and Cam are still valuable to this team and still going to play minutes. And there's going to be games where Miles is on, like today, and he gets more runs. So I think it's just really going to be matchup dependent. I do think, though, when we look at this, whatever flipped defensively, that started when CJ got in the starting lineup. And I do think this team is just much better defensively when either Jakari or CJ is on the floor right now, just with their ability to pressure the ball. And there's been a couple of matchups where, quite frankly, Joe and I were concerned about who CJ was going to be guarding because they had a size disadvantage, right? CJ had a size disadvantage, like the Northwestern matchup, for example. And, Bryce Williams is 6'7". He's only 6'3", and CJ is. And that was another thing that kind of got called out in the presser, was just how good of a job CJ did on him today. So another big matchup for him, and he performs at a high level again. Obviously, Purdue's helping at times. That's just kind of the nature of Purdue defense, but just having the initial matchup against, quite frankly, some of the best scorers in the Big Ten already, he's done a really, really nice job.
If anybody's watching on YouTube, they are watching a full display of me having absolutely no idea what I'm doing when I change the cameras. Somebody please save me. I'll stop.
We should point out, Chad P just put this in, so while we're talking about CJ here, I did not realize this in real time, I guess, but 23 points in 23 minutes today. I threw Joe his flowers for the preview show the other day. I'm going to take my own flowers, because I did in the preview show. I really felt like this had a chance to be a CJ game, and it was. So
there it is. There it is. Well, we're always giving flowers out to you guys. Two of the very best there's some great coverage with the Purdue Boilermakers across the board. But you two are as good as it gets in my book, and a great balance for wisdom, stats, X's and O's, the board, the whole bit. And then I just bring my nonsense where I don't know how to change the cameras correctly. So we appreciate everyone dealing with my nonsense. But man, these last few games, have just really gotten me fired up to, when we get to the end of the year, because you can just really start to see this team coming together. So it's fun because this is a new era, obviously, than the way they've played. And we talked about it, like I said, Kraig, to start the year, like, how are they going to find themselves, find their rotations, find their identity, to see all this come together the way it has. I would have taken 5, these last 4 wins, even if they were by 1 point, but to win by 20 points consistently, they're up by 30 at one point. It's just, it's honestly taken me a bit by surprise, and I shouldn't be. And I know there's a lot of fans that feel the same way. Like, it's just like every year you just trying to have a critical eye, and you question some of the things Painter's doing and how they're going to get this to work. And then it just all comes together. And that's why by the end of every year, I want to give Matt Painter Coach of the Year every year as it ends, because he just shows everything that he's all about. So, all right, well, we did the minutes. We've done some X's and O's on the board with Joe. And if there's anything you want to bring back to the board, Joe, that's always fine by us. But let's get into some stats of the game and some of the individual stats that you guys want to focus in on, and we'll start to round third here on this nice Sunday afternoon after a big win.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll bring up the Purdue stats here. I don't know, because I know, Kraig, you were impressed here. Like, we haven't gone through specific players, like kind of how we have in post games. We've still kind of hit on everybody. I think obviously the big one that stands out is 19 of 33 from 3 for Purdue. That's a pretty good percentage, if I do say so myself. Only 6 free throw attempts in this game, which is maybe even wilder. I believe they win the turnover battle by a good chunk today. 10 turnovers for Purdue, and then 17 for Nebraska. It's really small on my screen. I cannot see it at all. But I like those. Feel like those were, like, I think the 2 things I talked about in the pregame show. I think Kraig was like, hey, shoot the ball well, don't turn it over, and then good things are going to happen. And that's kind of how it went.
Yeah, I think the other big one that we got to kind of reference here, just because I'm not sure that it's happened yet this year, against a Power 5 opponent anyway, is Purdue's plus 13 in rebounding today. So now Purdue didn't give Nebraska a chance to get a lot of defensive rebounds because Purdue just didn't miss much today, right? But I don't think against Power 5 opponents anyway, I don't think we've been plus double digits in rebounds without Zach this year. So, I mean, we'll see. Not going to shoot the ball quite as well as they did tonight most nights. But it feels like they've turned the corner, at least in the last, few games since Caleb's been in the lineup, that we've been at least relatively even or positive on the rebounding front, which was a big concern, obviously, early in the season.
Do you guys hear background, like, noise, or is that just somewhere on my laptop?
Like, it's not me. Talking? I don't hear anything.
Okay. I don't know where this is at. Continue. I'm sorry. Yeah,
only 10 turnovers. That's the one thing. Like, 10 turnovers as a team. And then, like, with Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, who, handle the ball a lot, 3 turnovers for Braden, 0 for Fletcher, 1 for CJ Cox. Those are your primary ball handlers. How many times have we talked about this in the last few games? Like, that's incredible. Like, I'm just so impressed, and you don't have that fail safe with Zach Edey anymore. And to watch these guys operate the way they have, play at the level they have, and from an efficiency standpoint, and then to protect the ball like that, it's high level basketball. They're in their groove right now.
Well, and I think more importantly, even than the guards from that standpoint that you were just mentioning, and I think every game that Purdue's lost, TKR's turnover numbers have been relatively big. And you look at today, Trey has 7 assists, right? So your starting 4 has 7 assists and 0 turnovers today. That's huge. Because, you know, if you look at the Texas A&M game, if you look at the Auburn game, both him and Braden were high in their turnover numbers. It's just vital going forward that not only the guards don't turn the ball over, but TKR is making the right decisions. And that's one of the things that Painter talked about in the post-game presser also was when he catches on that short roll, they want him to pause for just a second, just a second of a pause to kind of survey the field before he goes into his move. So he's not trying to like read and react while he's going to the rim and figure out where to kick. That if he can just take that real quick pause and survey where his shooters are, then he knows once he starts to make his move.
Yep, you and Blake Widmer are on the same page. He said the same thing when he and TKR with 0 turnovers is more impressive than his 7 assists. Just as you were saying that, and he said you're in his head. So pretty good stuff there, you know, and yeah, it's just it continues to be impressive. I don't know where else you guys want to take this, some more of the individual stuff. I thought it was a lot of fun today to watch Miles Colvin, you know, find his rhythm, right? I mean, you know, you get when you have a game like this, if it's a tighter game, maybe you're not, maybe Miles doesn't have that opportunity. So you have a blowout. Now he gets into his groove. You know, I thought that was one of the bigger storylines from the game today, to see Miles kind of catch fire in the second half.
I leaned over to Kraig, and during the second half, I was like, Colvin is he's going to fire and get out of the shooting slump this half, or like he is doing that right now. I don't even, it's this is not like a negative statement what I'm about to say. He might have shot more than like the number of passes he had in that second half. If he was open, he was letting it fly, and he should. He needed to get out of the shooting slump. He goes 4 of 8 from 3. Like Purdue needs that from him. And yeah, Tammy Wallen says need Cam shot back. That's the one area where I was like, it would have been awesome to see Heidi be able to knock a 3 down. Obviously, Colvin goes 4 of 8, which is fantastic. Heidi, I think, still did good other stuff. That's 2 games in a row where the shot isn't there, but he's still contributed elsewhere. But yes, he needs to find his shot at some point too. Yeah, like I'm at the point with this game where it's just like I don't have a ton of analysis because it's just like brain dominated. TKR was so good in the short roll when he got it. Lawyer, quiet as 19 points. CJ Cox, he goes insane. Jakari did fantastic stuff in his minutes. Like Colvin gets out of the shoes. You just kind of go up and down, and it's just like first was awesome defensively once again. Like you can just kind of go up and down, and everybody did what they were supposed to do, and it's just a really, really good Purdue win.
Let me ask you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
I think kind of another storyline here over the last few games is Jakar starting to get a shot back. Not that he's going to be probably as proficient as CJ or Lawyer at any point in his career. I mean, he might be, who knows, but he can be an effective 3-point shooter. But he struggled for much of the season, and now I don't know the exact number, but if in the last 3 games, he's got to be shooting above 30%, 35%, somewhere in that range.
Now, okay, I need to preface this very, very small sample size, like very small sample size. In conference play, in conference games, he's 5 of 12 from 3, 42%. Over the last 4 games, he is, I can do quick math. Over the last 4 games, he's 4 of 8, which is 50%. Super small sample size. Like I can't, like, I don't think this is enough to say like, oh yeah, the shot's back, but promising signs for what he's able to do. And the thing that sticks with me with Harris is just like how confident he has stayed shooting the ball all year. Like he's been a guy that to me, there's a reason he's still putting them up at this point. And they're, because I still think he's a quality shooter. CJ's like the better shooter for sure, but I think Jakari's still a quality shooter, and all he needs right now with everything else that he does on the floor, he just needs to be solid, and 33%, something like that. I think he can get there, but that's a good call out, Kraig, that he's, again, small sample size, but looks like he's starting to get the rhythm.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because I know, like you guys said, and Kraig, anything else you want to add from this game, feel free. But I'm just curious, from if we're getting to the end of the show and trying to think outside the box of a topic here, just big picture perspective. If where did you guys have this team as far as their chances to win the Big Ten 5 games ago versus what you've seen over the last 5 games and where you put them now? I'm curious if anything's changed in that regard from what you've seen from Purdue and then what you've seen from everyone else.
I can go. I would say, let me see. About a month ago or so, I had Purdue in the clump of anywhere from like 4th to like 8th best team in the Big Ten, 4th to 7th best team in the Big Ten. I think now to me they're pretty clearly a top 4 team in the Big Ten. And so honestly, the way it is right now, they're like, you have to deep dive the schedules a little bit, anywhere from like a 20 to 30% chance, which is right in line to me with the other 3 Big Ten teams. Maybe it's a little higher because Illinois just had a bad loss, which, I still think Illinois is a very good team, but in terms of big title contention, that is a looming loss. So they're right in the thick of it, of that top tier of just a multitude of teams that could win it or just share a title, truthfully.
Unlike Joe, I never took them out of tier 1 because I always had faith.
They were always in tier 1 to me. It was just the tier 1 has gotten smaller.
Yeah. No, I still think they obviously have a chance to contend for the Big Ten title. I think it's going to be a racehorse between those top 4, Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, and Purdue. See how quickly Illinois gets Yakuchonis back here. I don't know if they've announced anything new since him not playing yesterday, but I mean, I think those are the 4 teams. Obviously, I know Michigan State and Purdue have really tough schedules to end it. All 4 of those teams have looked really good of late, other than Illinois getting knocked off without their most likely All-American point guard. So, like, I don't know. For the most part, Illinois went out and got a big win against UCLA, right? Or Oregon.
Oregon.
Yeah. It feels right now, anyway, just watching some of these matchups, like all 4 of these teams are going to get more heat in their schedules as it later on in the season.
Yeah. It's I'm definitely curious of that because I'm playing this game with my good friend Cody Del Mendo, who's a diehard Illinois guy. He does his own Illinois podcast. I believe it's called Beyond the Champagne or something. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I should know this if I'm going to shout out my good friend Cody Del Mendo. But regardless, I come in every day and I'm just like, yeah, Cody, congratulations on Illinois winning the Big Ten this year. They got it. There's absolutely nothing that Purdue can do to win the Big Ten. And his co-host Luke Stuckmeyer's like, don't listen to him, Cody. He's setting a trap. And so I'm setting this up because like I just feel like we're on a collision course for the end where nobody had Purdue, and maybe I'm just trying to will this into existence, but it has been very satisfying to watch Purdue coming into their own. Yes, Illinois loses to USC without their best player, but losing a home game like that is huge. So I'm just it's now we're starting, NFL regular season is over. Obviously the playoffs have just started, but we're getting into the swing of things here with college basketball. So I'm just amping up for the smack talk at the office. So,
there you go.
And then from it with that being, said, with some of the thoughts on where they rank, what's Purdue's ceiling for a seed this season? Imagine we only lose 3 if we only lose 3 more games.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find this. JBR Bracketology, very big following on Twitter. I'm sure there are people in here that know who I am referencing. Does a fantastic job with bracketology and things like that. He's one of my go-to. Obviously, like Delphi bracketology is up there as well. But I asked him this yesterday, and I don't know if I'm going to find it, but I believe he said, and he does a really good job with bracketology, say Purdue goes 15-5 in Big Ten play, probably max 3 seed, depending on like obviously quality wins, might be a 4 seed. Like that's kind of where he thinks that they would land, given 15-5 in the Big Ten.
Gregory?
I just
you looked like you were deep in thought, and I was like waiting for something.
Well, I was thinking, so I do think there's a little too much hype on the SEC. I think there are the top end of the SEC, Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, I think are really, really good. But there were some teams that had really good records going into conference play that really hadn't played much yet, like in terms of competition, and they've kind of gotten waxed in this early part of the SEC season. Some of those teams who had really good records, but maybe not their big resume wins yet. So I'm just, I guess, in my head, I'm wondering how that impacts all the numbers as the SEC starts to see separation between their top teams and the bottom tier.
And then Bobby
Their
here.
bottom teams are just the thing that's going to help them is their bottom teams are still like going to be solid. Like their bottom teams are going to be still better than Minnesota and Washington and Rutgers.
Yeah.
And that's just going to help them.
Bobby here, Bobby L33 Mayflower adds Ken Palm 9 for offense and defense, ranked 9 for offense for Ken Palm, 43 on defense. Torvik 8 on offense, 48 on defense. So
yeah, and if you filter it, which now you're getting a little smaller sample size, Purdue hasn't played the most quality teams. It still takes those things into account. Torvik has since on this 5-game winning streak in the country, Purdue has been the 4th best team overall, 5th best offense, 29th best defense.
Okay.
So like the signs are there. Also, I know there's some start comments, and maybe we can start getting into those and then kind of wrapping this up. But I do think this will be a conversation a little bit closer to March. Compared to most Purdue teams, this one feels like the most potentially built for March in terms of just right. The flaw is all the argument's always Purdue has no guards. Purdue can't match up on guards, and like maybe they don't have NBA guards. Although I think Braden Smith will get a shot at some point. They have an elite point guard, and then they have multiple guards that can just get buckets. And CJ Cox and Fletcher Lawyer, Harrison Colvin have shown. To varying degrees, obviously, that they can knock down threes. Heidi, in theory, can too. Like, there is more perimeter of attack that this team might just also be a little bit more built for March than some of the Purdue teams of past. Maybe not last year's, obviously, but like the years before that.
I'm going to read this super chat, and then I'm going to let you guys wrap things up because I have some things I have to do with the family here, and I also have to shovel my driveway, so I'll let you guys put a bow on this thing. But I got to give a shout-out to our girl SLK Boiler. She's one of our favorites. $9.99 super chat. I'm enjoying the team is talking more too. Better teamwork all around. Ball is moving. Defense is swarming. Teammates are grooving. Bam. I like it. Shout out to SLK.
That was something that for the first 2 months of the season, Painter was like, hey, my guys don't talk like on the court. Obviously, I think off court, another team that's really good locker room and stuff, but like on the court, he's like, nobody's talking. And yeah, that improvement probably also helps the defense as well as obviously the additions of First and CJ into the starting lineups.
Sydney adds, Joe's stats degree is showing with all this sample size talk.
I gotta stay true to form. Like, you know, I'm not one that I don't want to make big assumptions off little things.
No, I'm the hyperbole guy on the show. Okay.
Yep.
You're the preface with sample size, and then Kraig brings the wisdom.
Yep. So,
well, I know you guys are trying to hit the road, so I'll let you guys run through the starred chats because you know me with the Midwestern goodbye. I'll hold you up for another hour here on the Boilers in the Stands post game show. So as I take off, thank you to everyone that's tuned in for my portion. Now you get to have the more knowledgeable people finish it off. But thank you to everybody. Hit that like button, and I'll see you here for the next post-game show, and appreciate all you.
A little quick cut off, but yeah. Shout out, Greg.
I thought you cut him off. I thought you were like, all right, we're done.
But yeah, so we'll get through. We have a few star comments, then we'll kind of hit the road. Like I said, this is a game where Purdue does everything so well that it's hard to truly talk about at times, just because it's like I don't expect this game script to happen again. Bobby L33 Mayflower says that Fletcher flip up layup behind back moving away. WTF. He reminds me of an old white dude who played ball in the 50s. All his at rim shots are old school. Yeah, he's the dude that he'll play below the rim. He hasn't been great around the rim, but can be a little crafty. His floater was really good today, and we talked the last time, right? That the mid range has been elite. Yeah, I mean he's going to put up some funky shots at the rim, but they are going to drop every once in a while. Kraig, do you want to like alternate these? Or you just want me to take them?
There's a couple I'm going to talk about, but go ahead.
Oh,
with
this one was supposed to be for Braggs. Painter to the Bears.
Okay.
If you're still on, comment to next game, and then we'll get it up for Braggs.
Yeah.
Thorogood. Purdue is odds still. Bet them to win the Big Ten. They're in the mix. It's going to be a fun race. Lots of high quality games down the stretch. Obviously, maybe highlighted by Purdue going at Illinois to close out the regular season, but going to be a lot of fun games down the stretch. I do believe out of the top 4, Purdue and Illinois are the only two, or the two teams that they only have 4 games against the other top 3 left. Whereas Michigan and Michigan State still have 5 games against the other top 3. So that'll be something to monitor as well. SLK Boiler, oops. Smith's defense has taken a huge step up. Yeah, we talked about this on the show. I think while you were in presser, Kraig, or I kind of went on a little rant of like, Smith has been good defensively. He's not a all defense dude, but he is far from a liability at this point. I don't know if you have anything to add on Smith's defense.
No, that was something I put in my notes as the game was going on. Like, obviously the big defensive switch in terms of stepping up on defense really happened when CJ and First got put in the lineup. But also, like, Smith has, to me, been noticeably more active and noticeably more disruptive in terms of getting steals in these last 5 games during this winning stretch for sure. So also, Steve Tater Swingle says, Kraig, just an FYI, the announcers repeatedly said Esigian was from Fort Wayne, and somewhere else down here, Tammy said every time they said Esigian was from Fort Wayne, I cringed for Kraig. If you didn't watch the preview show, I took offense to Joe calling him a Fort Wayne kid when he went to Central Noble and comes from the Noble County area, a little small school over there. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you feeling for me while you had to listen to the announcers incorrectly say where he was from.
Yeah, fair enough.
Adam Stutzman says, was that a quad 1 win? It is not. Nebraska is 35, I think, in that right now. It could end up being a quad 1 win, but I doubt Nebraska finishes in the top 30, so probably not. I'm going to let you take this one, Joe.
So $4.99 super chat from Philip Inman. Appreciate the support. Says, hot take, Edey held Braden back. And then there's a kind of follow-up. Well, I'll say the follow-up. They kind of go back to back. Like, I don't know how to wrap my head around this because it's like, for Braden's individual stats, sure, but like, obviously Edey's so dominant. Yeah, it's going to hold him back because Edey deserves to take 20 shots a game. Like, you're going to feed him the ball because it was one of the best shots in the entire country, and he was the best player by far in the entire country. So like, I get it, but also you even saw improvements with Edey of like Braden. Like, there's a scenario where if Braden doesn't have Edey, he's not where he's at today with those reps that he got in the pick and roll last year of like, especially last year where he really took that big jump of like a guy you can really trust in pick and roll, but he also had the best roll thread in probably the entire country as the guy he could pass to. And so now he could build on that as like, okay, now I can expand on that from, I don't have to throw it at the rim to Edey every time. I can hit TKR and short rolls. I can get defense to put 2 on the ball and kick out to shooters. So like, I get points, but I do think there is some natural progression where Edey helps Braden get to where he's at today with what he was able to do the last 2 years with kind of having Edey as that safety, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Boiler Tice 9 says Edey held back our perimeter defense because they knew he was there to clean up if they got beat. This one I strongly disagree with, just straight up. Like, the perimeter defense wasn't great last year because the defenders weren't good. In large part, besides Lance Jones, Edey was one of the best defenders in the entire country because Purdue was not good on the Purdue was 24th defensively in KenPom, or no, 12th. Sorry, they were 12th defensively in KenPom. They had absolutely, like, if you just look at their paper minus Edey, they have no business being that good defensively. Edey covered up everything. I just think guys at Purdue improved. I think Braden has become a solid defender. CJ has been awesome defensively. Jakari's been awesome defensively. Miles has taken a jump defensively. Like, I think there's just natural improvements that if there was even Edey this year, you would still see those natural improvements and then also have Edey. So that's
yeah,
my take on that.
I do think just from a perimeter defense only standpoint, right, that they were always going to play drop with Zach. So, I mean, I could see somebody looking at it and be like, man, it seems like we're pressuring the ball a lot more just because we can do different things where Zach's not going to be in drop all the time.
I don't think they had the personnel to do it last year, though, either. Like, I just
Yeah.
straight up, I don't think that they had the dudes to be able to do that last year.
Right on, right on. Go ahead.
Tariq Kamel says Caleb's defensive impact has been tremendous as well. Yeah, I mean, been a big staple over the last handful of games. Because like he was like, I know like he's getting more minutes and that helps. He was not this good to start the year though. Like it's not like Painter should have just been playing him right away. Like he's kind of just not magically. He's kind of just fallen into it though, and now Painter's playing him more, and then it's just kind of cycling. So credit to Caleb first. KMKV6 says, did the pace seem significantly faster today? If so, why do you think that? I believe it was the fastest probably pace game since Penn State and one of the fastest of the year for Purdue. In terms of actual time, it was probably the quickest. It was a wildly just quick game, which I think skews things a bit. But, they force more turnovers. They can get out and run a little bit. I also think with how Nebraska was playing, like I don't think they did a good job getting back always. And so now Purdue's able to take advantage. Some longer rebound leads to some quicker outlets. You can grab and go from there. Multiple guys can now go. Like I think they're starting to find a little bit balance too of like playing a little bit faster when it's there, but not forcing it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you force turnovers, pace is going to go up. So that Penn State game, I think they forced 16 in that game, and then today they force 17, right? So I mean, when that happens, you're going to be able to get out and run more. And I mean, I like the change in terms of what Painter said in the press conference about them making some changes in terms of how much they're pressuring the ball on the perimeter. So I think that's great because I think that we talk about how to get Miles and Cam going. I think if we can get a few more steals, create a few more live ball turnovers, that allows for those guys to kind of excel at what their best characteristics are on the court.
Yeah, 100%. You see the two lobs today with that. Last comment from Steve Tater Swingle. Miles just needs to be more careful where he slings his webs. I think from my point of view, I think he got the T because he did the celebration directly at Asijan. It is what it is. I'm not too concerned. He'll just don't do it at a player. That is something they've been cracking down on. It'll be fine.
Oh yeah. Yep. No doubt. I mean, they all got their little thing now when they hit a three or whatever. So just need to make sure they don't do it directly at another player because that's what gets the technical every time.
Yep. So I think that'll do it for today's show. Like I said, massive win. Need to carry the momentum forward as they now head on their West Coast trip at Washington, at Oregon. Washington right now only down 9 at Michigan. They're a team that can look awesome one game and look like the worst team in the Big Ten the next game. So we will have the preview out sometime probably tomorrow, if not Tuesday at the latest. So make sure to like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications. You'll get notified as soon as that does go live. Appreciate everybody tuning into this and just kind of all the support that you've given us. We're about a little over 50% of the way through the season, I think. We only have like 9 or 10 weeks until Selection Sunday. Going to be a big, you have at Washington, which is a game that I think Purdue should win, but still on the road have to take care of business. And then it's going to start getting into a little bit tougher stretch. See how Purdue continues to roll. Should be a fun time. We will have all the coverage post and pre-game that you need. Yeah, that sentence works. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and we will see you all for the Washington preview sometime within the next day or two.